Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, welcome. As you are coming into our virtual space, welcome to the Connecticut School Discipline Collaborative Virtual Meeting for today, November 18, 2021. Good afternoon. As we begin to let our colleagues come into the virtual space, we wanted to welcome you all. We are going to be having about 30 more seconds before we start. So as we are admitting the members of the collaborative, welcome. So we have a couple of more colleagues coming in. And I think we are set to start. Good afternoon. Welcome to all of you. My name is Ingrid Kennedy, the Executive Director with the State Education Resource Center, and I will welcome you all to this virtual space, to the Connecticut School Discipline Collaborative Virtual Meeting is scheduled for today, November 18, 2021. For those of you who went through all your college courses, the professor always say, "Are you sure at the meeting this is the collaborative meeting for November 18, 2021?" Just making sure that we are all in the right place, and it's wonderful to have all of you here today. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the meeting today, and it has been an honor for me to facilitate the collaborative since its inception. So we've been together for a couple of years. I know that we might have a couple of new members joining us today, and we also have a couple of guests as well joining us today. I want to extend my deepest gratitude to the planning committee who has put together an amazing list of guest speakers for us today. We will go through the agenda as well, but I just wanted to extend the gratitude to our colleagues from the State Department of Education and our colleagues from CERC and all of those involved in today's meeting. So thank you so much for that. As we are preparing to enter into this time of being grateful and thankful for many things, let me tell you right now what I'm so thankful today. I'm thankful that our Commissioner, Charlene Russell Tucker, is able to join us from long distance. She's not in the office today. She's actually out of state. So thank you, Commissioner, for being with us. And I also thankful today because you are in this space today, that you have committed yourselves to be here today. Today, we are going to be engaging in a deep conversation, as we have done many times before when we get together. We have explored so many different topics related to school discipline. And I am grateful for your commitment and for the fact that you have committed to the purpose of this group or the collaborative. You have committed to advise the State Department on issues and policies and practices relating to school discipline. You have committed to evaluate and recommend plans for statewide school discipline, reform initiatives for the State Board of Education. You have committed to review effective practices carried out in Connecticut and other states to increase alternatives to exclusionary discipline and determine the feasibility of carrying out those practices in the state. And you have also committed to develop or identify tools for districts and school personnel to implement alternatives to exclusionary discipline. Thank you for your commitment. And with that said, I would like us, just for the purpose of today, to walk us through the way in which we are asking you to interact today with us, as we have guests and we have a lot of information that we will be providing you. So if we could please have the next slide. We are all by now very experts. We all should be getting doctorates in virtual spaces at this point. So we all know how to engage with each other, but because we have guest speakers today, we're asking you to please, if you have any particular comments, to post those ones on our chat. And if you would like to provide your comment, present a question, to please use the raise hand feature on your Zoom, the Zoom bar. So please make sure that we are interacting using also the expressions. At some point, I might ask you to just show your expression and your gratitude to the members of our guest speakers today. So with that said, at this time, I would like to introduce to you John Frassinelli, who is going to walk us through some of the items and agendas for today. I will be back shortly so that we can begin to facilitate the conversation. John?
Thank you, Ingrid. Thank you for that introduction, as always, and thank you to our partners at CERC for helping us put this on today, and thank you all for joining us today. We can move to the next slide. We'll talk a little bit about the agenda for today before we jump right in. We will hear from our Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker, and her vision and plan moving forward in this work. We also have a distinguished panel of folks from districts who have graciously joined us to share their experiences in this area. I also want to thank our friends at the Connecticut Association of Schools, Glenn Lungarini, for helping us put together this panel for today. So appreciate that. As always, the primary reason for bringing us together is to hear from you. And we've set aside a considerable amount of time to do that before we move on. Next slide. So just a reminder that the Connecticut School Discipline Collaborative, started by the department here and the commissioner, is to advise the commissioner and the state board on strategies for transforming school discipline and to reduce the overall use and disproportionate use of exclusive discipline in Connecticut. It's important to note, and I see some of our sort of our frequent flyer colleagues on the call today, Andy Feinstein and Catherine Meyer from our partners. Feels like I think this is the third meeting of similar conversations in as many days. So so thank you for joining us. And I think it just underscores that this work, as all of our work, requires a systems approach to school districts to support it. There's no silver bullet here. It's all of us working together and thinking globally and acting in the systems approach to support students in schools. So next slide, please. So again, the objectives for today is to advise the department and the commissioner and the state board on the work that's happening around school discipline. And furthermore, we wanted to provide an opportunity for districts to share what's happening in schools. And of course, the flip side of that is having you hear directly from our districts about what things are happening and what challenges are happening in schools. And with that, it's my distinct pleasure to introduce our Commissioner of Education, Commissioner Charlene Russell Tucker. Commissioner.
Thank you very much, John, and thank you to CERC, Ingrid, for your planning and facilitation, and to all of you that is in this space with us today. And for those of you who may be here for the very first time, really just want you to know that on October 31st of 2018 was our first school discipline collaborative. So we're not just here reacting to what's happening in our moment, but actually we've been doing this now, I think that's 3 years that we've convened our school discipline collaborative out of the concept and the notion that it will take all of us to work together in order to address the needs of our students, the needs of our school staff, the needs of our school community, the needs of our families, which is so critically important. And I'm sure you all know this is really important to us, and one to which we value all the voices that's in the space, and all the information for previous meetings. If you're new here, we'll share that. So I welcome everyone, and I so welcome our schools that's here. As you know, we don't handpick schools because either they're perfect or what it really is about, so we can have really respectful and candid dialogue about the realities that is on the ground, because that actually is what's going to help us to be as informed as we need to be to ensure that interventions, prevention strategies, anything we do is actually will be informed and making sure that we're addressing the issues that are in front of us. So thank you all for being here. Next slide. I just have a few slides. I'll go through them quickly. I could talk a lot about all of them, but just to set the stage for us, for those of you who've been paying attention to the investments of our ESSER and ARP ESSER resources in the state, you now hopefully know that there are 5 state level priorities for investing these resources: learning acceleration, academic renewal, student enrichment being one of the bucket priority areas. As you know, social emotional mental health supports of not only students, of our staff that is trauma informed, critically important, and one that I'm pleased to say that districts are investing in, as well as we are at the state level as well. The strategic use of technology development, addressing the digital divide, family and community connections, so critically important, and also building safe and healthy schools. So those are the areas that you'll hear a lot about, not today, but as you've been paying attention to the investment of the $1.6+ billion that is in our state for education transformation. Next slide, Greg. I wanted to share with all of you the areas of goals of the agency that's aligned with the priorities. And again, I could spend a lot of time on this. Maybe some other forum will really dive deep into it, but know that we are indeed working on curriculum development, making sure that we have quality curriculum accessible to all our educators. And so that work is underway. Supporting behavioral health, and I'll come back to that because it's so critically important. Engaging our families and communities. Again, some of you do double duty. You serve on our Commissioners Roundtable for family and community engagement in education. And so the need for engaging families and communities couldn't be more critical, even as we talk about addressing issues of school discipline, that we have our community, or what's happened outside of the schoolhouse doors, really important. And so engaging families and community and hearing our student voice, again, so important. Not on this slide, but I'm sure, hopefully you've all known that we just launched last week our Voice for Change, which is really first in the nation, participatory budget, where statewide, where we're putting those resources and hearing from our students as to how we should be spending those resources. Thank you, Maddie, for dropping that in. If you've not heard about Voice for Change, and we're so pleased with the resources. We're thrilled that we see students whose school districts, or high school students whose school districts did not opt into Voice for Change, that our students are having those conversations with their superintendents and school leaders saying, we want in, we want to have a voice for change in our state. So that is occurring right now on data-driven policy making, which is allowing us to really very clearly determine the impacts of the investment. We've stood up another first of its kind research collaborative in the state that is connected to all the investments that are occurring to make sure we know how the impact that those are having. Next slide. I wanted to focus on supporting behavioral health because I think it's really critical to when we talk about school discipline and addressing the issues that we are faced with and seeing. If you've not heard me speak before, hopefully you'll get accustomed to me saying this because it is true, and a passion is our big audacious goal in Connecticut. My goal to ensure that all school buildings have the resources they need to provide the comprehensive behavioral, mental health, trauma-informed support for students and for staff. And you should know we are in the throes of doing that right now. I believe that if we're able to do this, addressing social emotional learning and providing those supports, that we will be at the same time addressing the needs around school discipline and exclusionary discipline if we get it right. And so while I know districts are already investing, it is something that we're working at here at the state level intentionally. Just so to let you know, if you've not seen the news already this morning of a student who was apprehended that might have been with the goal of going to school this morning to do something that could be harm. And yeah, so important for us to think about the supports that is necessary. Frankly, it's a support in our schools, school buildings. It's also supports for our families and for our communities. And that's why I value all of us in this space, recognizing that we all need to agree on what it is that we need to do to make sure those resources are provided internally and external to our schools. And so I value your voice here, but that is the reason why the collaborative is so important. The diverse voices are so important here. It really is about us working together. We've got to find common ground. We've got to do this on behalf of our kids and families. And I welcome your voice and all of us working together to say, what are those resources that we need? We need to hear from our districts. We need to understand that. We need to hear from our students. We need to hear from our families. And then we need to be about the business of doing what's necessary to address the needs that are surrounding us. So just know that we are in the throes of working on this as we speak and engaging our districts around this work as well. I think that those are the slides from me. I think, Greg, is there another one after this? Let's see. And then we turn it over to Ingrid. So thank you all again. I'm here on the call, as Ingrid mentioned. I didn't want to miss this today because it's so important for us and to the agency and for all our team members, John, Kim here, that's doing this work every day. Thank you for all your work. And we're here to hear from our districts now and to then hear from our members together. With that, Ingrid, I turn it back to you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Thank you. So before I actually move it I introduce you to the members of our guests today, to the members of the panel. I want to provide you with a little bit of a context to set the stage for them. They have all been presented. They are going to be presented with 2 questions. They are loaded questions. And that is the fact of the work that we do as a collaborative. We do not shy away of really going deep into the current reality that is facing our state, the nation, our children and their families. The fact that we have 5 administrators today, they have agreed to join us to be able to really bring to our attention from their reality what it is that they are facing on a day-to-day basis regarding supports for our students. The commissioner said it beautifully. The essence of our work together as a collaborative, our partnership as a collaborative, is about how do we leverage support, resources to be able to ensure that our families and our children and their families are supported. And today we have 5 administrators who are leveraging at their buildings and the school districts those levels of support. So the way that we are going to be facilitating today's conversation, we are going to welcome them to the space. They are going to be presented with questions. Then I'm going to ask us as members of the collaborative to answer some questions. As members of the collaborative, we are going to be posed with some questions as well. So let me go ahead and introduce you to our guest panelists today. If I could please have the next slide. So let me introduce you to Stacy Butkus, a school principal from the Connecticut Technical Education and Career System from H.C. Wilkes Technical High School Regional Schools. Kevin Walson, Superintendent of Danbury Public Schools. Amy Yost, School Principal, Shelton School District, Sunnyside Elementary School. Andre Hauser, a School Principal, Waterford Public Schools, Waterford High School. And Dr. Allison Villanueva, Superintendent of Watertown Public Schools. This is me introducing you to their names. I'm going to ask them as I ask them the questions for them to please repeat their names to you and their school districts so that you can hear it from them. As I have shared with you in this space, in the virtual space, these little squares that we're in, they have their name underneath, but our names are just too important and we need to hear your name as you like your name to be heard. The way that you heard it was Ingrid Kennedy's interpretation of their name, and I probably made a lot of mistakes as I was reading them, but we're going to hear it from them especially. So as I shared with all of you, they are all going to be asked a couple of questions, and they're really loaded questions. So in order to facilitate the conversation, the first question is going to be the same first question is going to be asked of our 5 guest speakers, and then we will move to the second question. We are going to start alphabetically by school district. So the first administrator that is going to be answering the question is Stacy Butkus from the Connecticut Technical School and Career System. And if I could please have the first question posed. So, Stacy, in
Good
your
afternoon,
district,
everyone.
good afternoon, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
So the question, what I'm going to do for the purpose of the collaborative, I'm going to have the question up right now, and then I'm going to ask for the question to be pulled down so that we can see each other. I know that some of us have one device, multiple devices, so that we were able to see each other. So the question that I'm going to be posting for each one of them is, in your district, how are you attending to students' discipline concerns that existed prior to the pandemic? And those school discipline concerns, they have emerged since returning to school full time. So Stacy, thank you so much for being the first one, and the space is yours. Thank you. And Greg, can we please put the question down? Thank you.
So thank you and good afternoon, everyone. So in terms of addressing student discipline that existed prior to the pandemic, we're really, and we always have, just looked at the whole child, what's causing the behavior. Coming back from the pandemic, one thing that we've realized is that kids haven't changed, but their experiences are very different than our kids that we've seen in the past. So we do have to take a different approach with them. And as we did prior to the pandemic, reinforcing the desired behaviors, setting our expectations, and constantly reinforcing what our expectations are is crucial, particularly now. We've taken a tiered approach to some of the discipline that we've seen since we've all been back together. I have over 800 students in my school, so having them all come back together at once posed a few challenges. Kids forgot what the expectations were. They forgot how to behave in the lunchroom because they hadn't done it in a very long time. So again, just reinforcing, reteaching, having that compassionate lens that, you know, they're not doing this because they want to break a rule or get in trouble. They really did just forget what we expected. So constant reinforcement has been our focus.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you. So I'm going to be asking Kevin the same question. Kevin, if you don't mind introducing yourself. Kevin, if you don't mind, I think your microphone, it is not audible to us. Great, thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Kevin Walston, Superintendent of Schools here in Danbury, Connecticut. And sorry for the distracting shirt. It doesn't look like that in real person. So just want you to know, it's just simple checks. I'm not sure why that's happening. Ingrid, can you share the question and slide again, please?
Of course. Greg, would you mind? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And so I will start answering this question by sharing with this panel, as a district, as a community, we planned, anticipated for increased challenges, increased social emotional challenges district-wide. We made a point of adding additional social workers across the district. We made a point of accelerating our plan to add more guidance counselors to the district. We hired a position called school climate specialist to address lower level discipline issues in our school buildings. Quite frankly, it was nowhere near enough. We learned when we first got back that our students were having a very difficult time self-regulating and just making these self-regulating type decisions that they made prior with very little redirection. Our staff, we were reminded that they experienced trauma in the same way, or very similar way that our kids experienced trauma during the pandemic. And so as much as we had to address the social emotional challenges of our students, our kids, and we carved out significant time for restorative practices during our school day for students. But I don't think we were prepared for the taxing of our staff when the doors were open for all of our students. So in that regard, it has been challenging. We have I will say that we are, revisiting some of the priorities we have made just in terms of staffing and how we're deploying resources district-wide. And so, whether that's Alliance, whether that's our operational, whether that's our ESSER, like we're revisiting all of those commitments we had made previously, because what we're recognizing is everything that we tried to plan for something we never experienced before. And we're coming back and rethinking, how we're supporting schools. Some of them are, right now thinking about how we're going to fund assistant principals in some of our elementary schools that are over 450. And so for years, that's something we've always asked the board to support and fund. Now we don't have a choice. Like, we just need to figure it out, find the monies, and address the cliff when the cliff comes, because our teachers are calling the office and no one's answering, because we have one principal addressing the needs of 500 in the building, and we need to make sure our teachers have the support. So those are just some of the things that we anticipating going into the school year, some challenges that we anticipated, and how we plan for them. But then on the other side, the reality was very different once we open our doors. And again, I feel like we need to be a little bit more intentional on how we support staff right now, so they can continue to meet the needs of our kids. I've had meetings with all of my kindergarten teachers across the system. They took the time to meet with their superintendent, just walk through their challenges, and the fact that their kids have not been in school yet, and they're crying for support. And so we just had our second meeting last week, and we've moved some things around to provide support for K2. I could not promise them I would have a paraprofessional in their building. I know that's essentially what they were asking for, and I told them I couldn't do that. However, we will have support in the building to make sure K1 and 2 are supported, because and this is not to suggest, and I said the same thing to them, not that we don't want to prioritize all of the grade levels, but we have K1 and 2 have not had a full year of school yet, and so we're making that a priority, as part of our focus. But it has not been easy. I shared a similar statement with my board last week, a couple of weeks ago, and then had follow-up discussions with my advisory council to the superintendent, as that group has been sharing their concerns across the district. And I'm trying to find ways to just let them know that I'm here to support them. The district is here to support them, within my respective sphere of influence. And, we will fight through this, like we always have here in Danbury. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And it's mostly because, our kids, they just kind of figure it out. They're happy to be back in school. They're wearing a mask, and they follow the policy. And, but our staff is having a really hard time. And behaviors have escalated in a way that, we've just never had to deal with before here in Danbury. And so staff is having a hard time responding to these things because they've never had to experience them, and I think many of my colleagues on this call have had the TikTok challenges at the beginning of the school year. And my staff was just like up in arms, just things were moving so fast, we could not keep up. Thank goodness the social media challenges have calmed down a bit. But our kids have been so adept over the last couple of years in social media. Now there's other issues in the building that take place because of the social media, and how kids communicate, in that platform and at a speed that our adults cannot keep up with. So it's interesting times for sure, but we will continue to adjust and be ready.
Kevin, thank you so much for that perspective. And as you were sharing, I can definitely see the colleagues in the space, just this shaking of the heads and agreeing with you. I actually took notes from you and Stacy as well, and we will come back. So thank you for providing that perspective about the school district.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, I would like to ask Amy Yoles, if you please introduce yourself, and I will ask you the same question. Amy?
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to probably say reiterate a lot of what my colleagues have already shared with Kevin and Stacy. As much as we anticipated what the school year was going to be like, I don't think we truly understood what we were facing. I think most of us felt like last year was one of the toughest years in teaching as a teacher and administrator, but I really feel like this year going into it is what we're really challenged with right now. It's kind of with the trauma that our children have gone through in our staff. And I think that is a critical piece. And Kevin, thank you for kind of reiterating that. We keep focusing on the children, but if our teachers aren't in a good mindset, then really the whole system will come crashing down. And being in an elementary, so again, Sunnyside Elementary School, our kindergarten, our first graders are definitely struggling the most right now. Just with the regulation of emotions, learning how to cope, basic skills that we take for granted of just learning how to share, how to follow a direction from somebody other than their parents. And again, I feel a lot for the parents for the past year and a half of those that had to work from home and try to be their child's teacher and caretaker, all while trying to work. So, those routines and structures that normally children by the end of first grade really have that school structure in place. We're a year or two behind already in that. And I anticipate that will be the trend for the next 2 years as children haven't had exposure to preschool, daycares, just something, another setting where they have to follow directions. They have to be with peers, learn how to share. And then the pandemic also of us all staying that physical, social distancing where it was physical distancing. And, in schools, I'm a hugger when my kids come off the bus. I'll give them the side hug, the high five. And that was very, that's organic for most of us. And it really put a very unnatural feeling as an educator for those primary grades, not to do that. And I think children have lost that sense of touch. So when we look at how we can get some programming in place, we really looked a lot at, we have a very rigorous academic block schedule, but we had to look at that and really revisit and see where we could fit some social emotional pieces into our schedule and learning, that being said, because of stamina. So stamina was the other component that we're seeing children just don't have that ability yet. And that's coming off of that, the transition from that remote learning where, everyone did a phenomenal job and did the best that we could when we were thrown into something that we knew nothing about. Now Zoom or Google Meet is just par for the course. You'll have a few a day and that's just how it is. But that learning curve of being at home and, perhaps just being on the computer for a few hours a day, getting your academics done. And then the children had the rest of the afternoon. Now you're trying to get them more, acclimated back to a 7-hour day. Granted, they may not have academics at full time, but they're on all that. They're on for that 7-hour day. Even I have children of my own that are older. So I see the elementary and I see the high school, even college end of it all. So it's building back that stamina for kids. We're looking a lot into and working with, I have a smaller school, but I always say we're small but mighty because I share all of my personnel. So I don't have anybody that's full time. So I'm constantly working with my support staff, counselors, social workers, school psychologists, and filling them in on every day of, what has happened in scenario A, B, or C. So really in talking and trying to hone in on whose responsibilities they'll take over. So we're really looking at more programming within the classroom, whether it's second step, doing some whole child resource program that we're doing a lot through literature for kids because they connect with characters on an elementary level. They really like that. They can connect the feelings and how a character acted and make some similarities there. Also talking about mindset and gratitude. So we're embedding that within the natural conversations within our school. But again, I think in trying to get that self-regulation and that coping, because what I'm seeing is kids just, they can't cope. Our little guys, if you say no to them, I have desks that are being flipped. I have kids running out of the building. And the other piece that, we're trying of this puzzle to put together is the lack of staffing. So, I know we're all facing that. So what happens is who's leaving what district to fill a pocket in another district, and then that pocket's just being reopened someplace else. People aren't applying for substitute positions. So who at the, the beginning of a day is who's covering lunch, so you have the best laid plan of support staff going in and doing a lesson, but then all of a sudden your whole day changes, whether it's, that tiered intervention for behaviors or academics, but it's broken down because you're trying just to get coverage for safety purposes of the day to function. So that's kind of where where I am right now. And again, that definitely that lens. And I truly am one to believe in children have to, that whole child model, and children have to feel safe coming into school, and they have to have that regulation, that emotional regulation, before they can really start to achieve. It just makes sense that if they feel good about themselves and they know where they can go to seek that, to seek out support, then they're going to be able to move academically. And we've seen that in my building. You know, I'm very impressed with the ability my teachers have put forth with that. And we do a lot of branding within the school. So you have your, you know, the school climate pieces that are put into place and constantly going, we follow the ruler model. So we have the charter that we go through, and how do you want to feel coming into school? So there's a lot of talk about, you know, feelings in our building, and launching off of some basic social emotional surveys too, so we can continue to with our programming and see what we need to target.
Amy, thank you so much for that perspective. Thank you. I keep taking notes and notes. We're going to come back, and I know the members of our the collaborative are also taking notes. Thank you so much. Andre, the same question, if you don't mind introducing yourself. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andre Hauser, and I'm the principal of Waterford High School in Waterford, Connecticut. And listening to the other panelists, I have to tell you, on the one hand, it's great to know that I'm not an island. On the other hand, it's, you know, troubling as educational professionals to hear about the kinds of struggles that schools across the state and probably across the country are facing. Because there was something that each of the previous panelists said that I had to grab a pen and start jotting down notes. Absolutely, I agree. You know, these are the same things we're seeing. And, you know, I think about what Kevin and Amy both said. We knew this was going to be a challenging year, but we thought we were on the way back to normal, or towards creating, you know, a sort of a new normal. But we realized there would be trauma, there would be things that kids would struggle with, staff would struggle with. So just like Danbury, we increased our school psychology staffing at the high school here. We brought in an outside agency to help provide the therapeutic aspect of an alternative program in our high school. We had extensive online social emotional learning training for our faculty last year from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. We really started thinking, even more than we already did, about boosting restorative practices as our approach to discipline. And we still don't have enough in place to meet the needs of kids right now. I had a conversation earlier this week with a group of principals from throughout Eastern Connecticut. I asked them your questions. And just as a consensus, we really were experiencing the same things. And really what we were seeing, we felt broke out into three big changes we're seeing in the way students are conducting themselves. And keep in mind, these are high school students, teenagers. First of all, there were too many missed opportunities for normal growth in maturity. We normally expect every year's freshmen to come in and see what the big kids look like and act like. The only kids in my school who have ever seen a full normal year of high school are my seniors. And they saw it through the lens of ninth graders. Our eighth graders coming in were in a very structured middle school experience last year that really didn't have a lot of that built-in time for growth and development into being a mature high school student, or mature by the standards of ninth grade. A member of my staff commented recently at the end of a lunch duty that we have 2 freshman classes because our freshmen really never outgrew that more or less big 8th grader level of maturity, and our 8th graders are just learning how to be freshmen. At the same time, you know, high school from your living room is not the right way to do things. Too much isolation has really led to a weakening of a lot of the normal social skills we would expect to see students. Stacy mentioned having to teach, you know, and reteach those basic skills. Amy mentioned talking about, you know, basic readiness. The same is true in high school. We've got kids coming in who have forgotten what raising your hand is, or they've forgotten you actually have to physically bring stuff with you because it's always been on Google Classroom, or you could always just, you know, attach it for the last year. And let's face it, these TikTok challenges, the bathroom vandalism in September that a lot of us saw, I have bad news. The November one has to do with using the strings on your mask to saw through plastic furniture. And we're starting to actually see that happening in our school. You know, a lot of those things, meeting deadlines, attention span, ability to have time on task. You know, Amy mentioned that with the elementary school students. It's just as challenging with high school students. And then there's the elephant in the room of mental health. Anxiety, stress, it leads to a short fuse. And when you've got kids with a short fuse, and let's face it, adults who probably also have a slightly shorter fuse, we're seeing a huge change in student behavior with a difficulty resolving any sort of interpersonal conflict. And that's leading to a lot more aggressive behavior, whether it's verbal or physical, from student directed at student over the course of this school year. You know, that pretty much didn't exist last year. It was a special treat to be able to come to school 2 days a week. And now kids who are back in person all the time are really, struggling to maintain appropriate boundaries and appropriate distance in many cases between each other. And working on resolving those conflicts when you're so used to all of your interaction being behind a screen for the last year has really proven to be a big challenge. The things we've been addressing, I mentioned that increase in staffing in the mental health area. If I could double those increases, maybe we'd have what we need. In terms of discipline, how we're approaching discipline, we're really leaning heavily in on restorative practices. Peer mediation, when these kids are having trouble in those peer-on-peer interactions, sitting them down with the right person, whether it's an administrator, a counselor. Believe it or not, a lot of them are resonating very well with our school resource officer as a peer mediator. Increased counseling staff participation right from the beginning in the behavior issues of a lot of students. We're finding that having kids actually write out reflection, between getting sent out of a class or having a behavior halted, and when you talk to an adult about it, having them actually script out their thought process. Why did this happen? What were you doing? What alternatives could you have used? And when we do need to suspend kids, and we're really, doing the best we can not to, incorporating an educational component into it. Other than physical aggression, vaping is the big issue. Apparently, there was nobody at home telling kids not to vape in some circumstances last year. And so really re-educating them on the kinds of things they would have been hearing in school last year, had they been here more, about the health risks and the issues associated with the choices they're making. But it does come down in a lot of ways to reteaching and reinforcing those basic social norms that seem to have sort of fallen by the wayside over the course of the last year and a half.
Thank you so much for that perspective and for your approach, for all of you so far, linking your realities. And as you mentioned, you're not alone in this island. And I can see my colleagues from the collaborative continue to take notes in the reaction to what you're sharing. And just as a put a perspective, when we began to plan for this session about 3 or 4 months ago, we were talking about the challenges, the TikTok challenges, and knowing what all you are trying to address together and what is coming your way. It just brings us to our perspective and the reality of the now. So that's going to be what I can put in this space is you have before you, you are sharing this information with a group of individuals that are ready to support and to share those supports and those, how can we help you attitude with all of you. So thank you for what you have shared so far. And I'm going to now ask Allison, if you can just please introduce yourself and also share your perspective with the group. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. And I know that we have a finite amount of time together, so much of what my colleagues here said on the call thus far is very similar to our district here. I think Andre said it, that we all kind of imagined what the year would be like. I call it romanticizing what the year was going to be like in the summer. You know, we were trying to kick back our feet and see what it's going to be like. And when it started, it was just a little different. And so we've had to, I've been working a lot with our faculty here to get ourselves, just as a professional group, the ability to give ourselves the permission to understand that there's an ebb and flow to surviving and thriving. And so when we are thriving, to celebrate those small wins as best as we possibly can. And when we're back in survival mode, just to know that pragmatically, that's what we need to do at the moment. And the same is true for our students at the moment. And that is certainly helping our morale, but it doesn't mean that nobody's tired or that nobody's at their wits' end by the time Friday rolls around. You're right, there are things and key factors that are happening right now, things like personnel shortages. And because of those shortages, sometimes training is not necessarily 100% when we throw people into the river. And I'll give the analogy of the river because the water in the river is always there. The fish are always there. Those are our children. And right now it feels like our employees are also part of that river and those fish. But really, unless we're going to try to keep afloat and try not to drown in the river, the larger systems need to start to change. So whether we start to change the shoreline or we change the mouth of the river and the exit of the river, those are those kind of larger vehicles that need to make moves just across our districts in our state. So, some things that I've been certainly pondering to myself, not necessarily having any answers. When I think about our pre-service education programs, as we receive our interns who are now substituting for us in every possible way they can, how are we preparing them for the tour de force when it comes to the mental health needs that we have in our schools at the moment? When it comes to things like our community knowledge, we talk a lot about our kids who haven't been to preschool or to daycare, and they're just jumping in now to kindergarten or first grade for the first time. How are we preparing our parent populations, before our kids are even school ready age to come in here? And so I think about how difficult it is to reach families who aren't in school yet, but the mobility of trying to provide whether it's education or resources or support, so that at home it starts very, very young. Again, I don't have any answers, but things that just are on my mind. And also just the understanding of the world of special education is something at the moment. A lot of discipline referrals are unfortunately heavy-handed when it comes to this ambiguous line of special education and alternative needs. And so understanding what it means when we are exclusionary and when we put somebody out for 180 days, how that can exacerbate a situation. And oftentimes it's our populations and subgroups who are unfortunately at a disservice, or they're experiencing a disability, or perhaps they are of a minority race or a socioeconomically challenged group. Sometimes there's not enough understanding or knowledge around it to really kind of fight back when the situation's occurring. So I wonder about that education piece as well, for not just our professional group, but also for the parent community and for our boards of education as we work with them. And everybody, the intent is good and it's positive, but sometimes when you don't know, you just don't know, and decisions are made, and it can impact the river and it can impact the fish. And so, again, I won't take up too much time. The other part that is certainly floating in my mind too is as we move century to century through schooling, and we think of alternative schooling, oftentimes people think it's just the kids who can't make it in school. But I think our landscape is changing so drastically now that even just regular kids who go to school need alternative opportunities now and alternative experiences. Whether it's, and this is very just concrete manufacturing opportunities, and I know the state's doing a lot of work around that, or if it's just changing programs and courses so that kids know how to do life when they leave, and things of that nature, just opening up and broadening those opportunities so that we can take alternative approaches to being successful in the world after we graduate, are things that all cross my mind, but no answers, not as of yet. Thank you for letting me share.
Thank you so much. Thank you to all of you. As I shared with the collaborative, that was only question number one. And as you can see, what question number 1 brought from our administrators, the reality. I have notes and notes of what I took and some of the words that I heard. And they're resonating deeply. And I know they are resonating with you as well because of what we are about as a collaborative, trying to support in addressing the needs and provide advisory support to our colleagues at the State Department of Education and the Board of Education. So please take a look at your notes, circle those words, those statements in your notes, because we're going to go back to it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to pose the second question. The way that we are going to go with the second question, I'm just going to pose the question and ask our guests to openly, we are going to, in any order how you feel to respond. We're not going to do it in the structure that I just did. I'm just going to pose the question and feel free to respond. I'm just going to make you aware of the time. We have a brief amount of time together. And if you can limit your response to about a minute and a half, because I want to open then the opportunity for the members of the collaborative to ask you questions as well. So Greg, if we can please have the second question. This is there's technical in nature because this is specifically about your data. In reviewing your disaggregated data, which student groups are most likely to experience disciplinary procedures in your districts? That's the big concept of the question. Underlying that question is, what kinds of intervention supports are being implemented in response to the needs expressed? What additional resources are necessary to address the needs expressed by all of you? So think about the big question. You're looking at your data based on the response to your question number 1, the reality. So who are the students? Who are those students? And what kind of supports and interventions are you providing to them? So I can repeat the question if you need to, but I'm going to ask Greg if we can put the question down. And who would like to answer to open the discussion with that question? Stacy, thank you.
Yeah, I can start with that. We've seen our younger students, primarily our 10th grade and our 9th graders, experience the most amount of conflict and inability to really live up to our expectations at times. And it goes back to everything that we said in the first question. They haven't had those experiences. They haven't been in school long enough. And for me, my biggest challenge is 45% of my population is Spanish speaking. I only have 2 Spanish speaking members of my staff. And really being able to have those open and honest conversations with parents where it's an actual conversation, they can talk with us and we can talk with them. That is a huge challenge for us because so much of what we do is that education speak, and when parents are, I don't speak Spanish and I can tell them in English and it's not, they're not able to understand me. I'm not able to understand their challenges and their needs. So I would say that's been my biggest challenge this year is the language barrier. We don't have a diverse staff despite our diverse student population.
Thank you, Stacy. Same question. Any other member from the panel that would like to answer? What does your data tell you? Amy, thank you.
So very similar to Stacy, when I look at our, it's her 9th and 10th graders, it's my K-1 students. And, prior to coming in, I kind of looked at all of the referrals that are kind of coming to me, looking at that. And what I'm definitely seeing is it is a mix of our brown Black students and white students, but I'm definitely seeing more males right now. So I'm just kind of sharing what the data is looking like. So I'm seeing a lot of the behavioral issues with our K-1 male students. And we are, when we talk about resources, we're really reaching out to the outside agencies and trying to work with families. So again, we're not looking at suspension, obviously, with K and 2 either, but even with our 3rd and 4th graders, we're just trying to get creative because we want our students to be in school. They need to be in school. They need that routine and structure. So we're really working with families and reaching out to our outside agencies, but we're also finding that there's the waiting lists already at this time of year are full. And so they're really trying to prioritize of what students, and hopefully with a call from us, we can kind of move them up on the lines. We're encouraging families to speak with their pediatricians to hopefully maybe get a different outside therapist that, or, agency that they can be also working with. Just trying to get to see where the children, again, because they are there, and I love the phrase, and I think it was Andre that used it, the striving with, no, I'm sorry, it was Allison, striving and thriving, because at this point, so many are surviving and thriving. So many of our students are just trying to survive right now, even at this young age of 5. And as an educator, I go back to the question at times of just Connecticut in general, are we doing right by our young ones, that pre-K of having a kindergarten entrance of December 31st. I think we're one of the fewer states that still has December 31st when we talk about those readiness skills. And the pandemic is really exacerbating that situation of where readiness skills are. And I do think it's time that we really look at that, where most states have either an August 1st or September 1st cutoff to enter kindergarten. And there's a huge discrepancy when we talk about a child who is turning 5 in December, but then their peer at the same table is turning 6 as of January 2nd. And that year of development really at those early ages is something to consider. So again, I don't have the answer to that, but that is a question that keeps being posed in pockets that I'm meeting with other principals and even with my teachers. When we looked at our data this year, and I'm going to wrap up because to give everyone else an opportunity, 1/3 of our kindergartners are what I call late bloomers. So they're after that September 1st birthday. So that is a piece of a puzzle that we have to look at data to say, how are we going to support these children that didn't have the exposure to preschool or and daycare? And then we know that's coming down the pike in the next couple of years. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Kevin?
Sure, I'm happy to go next. So for one, we have had issues, challenges, concerns in our district with suspending specifically Black and brown boys who are special ed students. And so we've had those issues and concerns in the past. Those students specifically have been suspended disproportionately. Unfortunately, what we are finding right now is that those students are suspended at an accelerated rate. And it's not just special ed students, but particularly boys of color right now. At my level, I'm seeing the suspension data. However, I'm informed by my K-5 elementary principals that incidents are rising like never before in their respective schools. But of course, we're not suspending students at that level. And so we're, using other restorative practices, et cetera, to help support and redirect behaviors down there. And this is not to suggest that's not also happening 612, but some of the incidents are so egregious that we don't have a choice but to suspend. But we are finding that the same students who were disproportionately suspended before, that number is increasing. And this is data we just looked at this week in our district data team meeting. So unfortunately, we were just reminded of this, but it's also negatively impacted our chronic absenteeism numbers in 612 as well. And so that's also an issue of concern for us. And then last but not least, we're over 60% in our district, over 60% of our students identify as Latinx. And with that, this population is negatively impacted, by the disproportionate number of students being suspended and disciplined and impacted by chronic absenteeism. So we're really concerned about that. Just had a meeting with my principals this morning, talking about strategies around chronic absenteeism. And so, the same way we address issues with making sure all of our kids are connected with laptops, we'll be applying some of those same strategies to make sure our kids are in school every day and coming up with ways to address our more needier students and making sure we're encouraging them not only be in school every day, but one-on-one, working with our more needier kids and just making sure they have an adult to identify with to keep them in school and keep them out of trouble.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm now either Andre or Allison. Andre, go ahead.
Okay. Kevin mentioned chronic absenteeism, and that is definitely something we've been struggling with at our school throughout the pandemic. And as my administrative team and I were looking at our discipline statistics so far for this year, we started to notice a pattern of there is a definite subgroup of students who are overrepresented. It's the students whose families chose a fully remote schedule last year, or the ones who were on our hybrid schedule, but were sort of self-opting into more distance learning days than they were supposed to. And it comes down to, as far as we can put our fingers on it right now, the ones who were engaging with the school and engaging with their learning and their peers as much as they were allowed to last year actually seem to be doing pretty well. The more students stepped back from that, if you stepped back from the hybrid schedule to the fully remote schedule, we're seeing a significant uptick in absenteeism, in failure rates, and of course in conduct issues. If you were one of those students who was fully remote and not even engaging at that level, we had a number of students, sort of the term a lot of, administrators are using is the ones who went dark on us for a while. You never saw them on a screen. Maybe they logged in, but it was just a blank screen and no mic. Or they didn't log in, but occasionally some work showed up in Google Classroom. Those kids are really struggling with the return to in-person learning. They really struggle with the typical internalized academic norms for students, and even more so, they're struggling with behavioral norms for people in groups. And yes, we do, like most schools, we have a proportionality issue with our Black and brown students, with our male students, with our students with IEPs that we've recognized and we're targeting. But really what we're seeing this year is how much they engaged in their learning last year is a direct indicator of how well they're going to successfully engage in learning and behavior this year.
Thank you so much, Andre. Allison, would you like to add?
I think I'm okay at the moment. I'm just listening for the next question. I'll jump on in there. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you. I want to take this opportunity to thank you all for your thoughtful, real, on the moment, what you deal with every single day, perspectives that you have brought to the space. I saw a couple of questions coming through the chat. I'm going to ask my colleagues to see if we can present one of those or a couple of those questions. And then also for the members of the collaborative, if you would like to ask a question to our guests, please raise your hand and we will call on you to be able to ask the question. So I'm going to, Faye, I see your hand up. Thank you. I'm going to grab the question from the chat first because it's been posted for a minute. Then Faye, I will have you next. And then Catherine Myers, you will be after Faye. Thank you. So I will ask either Sarah or Kim, if we can address, if you can bring forward one of the questions that was presented at the chat. Sarah?
Absolutely. There was one question around for the superintendents, particularly around the rise of parents' rights movement and the Board of Education meetings. And could they speak on if there have been any difficulties in dealing with boards of education?
Thank you. And this one was specific for our superintendents. Thank you.
I'm not sure about Allison. I'll just jump in quickly and say, I have not had any challenges in that regard, Sarah.
Thank you, Kevin. Allison?
Wow, that's wonderful, Kevin. I was almost wondering if you're being sarcastic.
No, other challenges, yes, but no, not that one specifically.
And I want to respond absolutely respectively of the community that I work in. I love this community. I am committed and wholly dedicated to this community, but I do think that just what we're going through as a nation, as a world, as an just as a globe right now, has certainly brought everybody to their wits' end, if I can use that term. I think our Board of Education has done a marvelous job of listening as best as they can, no matter how hard it has been and in which mode it comes in, with the understanding that no matter how somebody is talking to you, yelling, screaming, throwing something, somebody is trying to communicate something. And so they have kept, our Board of Education has kept an open mind to just understand where people are. Sometimes it doesn't make sense, but we always take a moment to reflect and try to figure out what it is that they're trying to say. One thing that I have come to see and that I can confidently say is that there is misunderstanding, misconception. There is not necessarily common understanding around some of the very, very hot topics. And it's very easy for people when it's a high conflict time to pick a side, because we just kind of live in that human world where it's, Coke or Pepsi, what's your choice? And unfortunately, sometimes it's uninformed. And when that's happening, it's almost pointless to argue or to defend, because the outcome will be what the outcome is when you're in a high conflict situation. And so to be able to give some time and some pause for people to take a step back and just kind of become civil with one another gives a little bit of space so that then people can once again engage in conversation. I'm also very proud of our Board of Education for passing a policy during this very kind of unrestful time around just the teaching and learning of historical and current events in a civil manner, and just talking about the norms of civility when we're engaging with one another. So I don't think I've completely answered the question, but to that, I think just in general right now, whether it's discipline related or media related, another thing that has come to light is that school boards do not have the media engine that the wider media has. And so we do need to move carefully and cautiously, but very poignantly, so that whatever message we are trying to give out is clear and it's authentic, because we certainly don't have the multi-million dollars that Time Warner or CNN or Fox News has. And we would be obliterated in a second if we tried to go up against them.
Thank you so much for that perspective. I know I have three. I have Faye, Catherine, and Michelle ready to ask some questions, to present you with some questions. Before I open the mic, the opportunity for them to ask their questions, I'm going to ask Greg to please, would you mind posing the next question for the questions that we want to ask as members of the collaborative for you. And as the conversation continues, we want you to please take a look at these three questions, because what you heard today from our guest speakers was about the reality. I have notes, copious notes about some of the words, some of the statements that they made. I heard a lot about resources, supports, staffing, supporting the students, supporting their staff, the teachers. So as a collaborative, we would like you to think about, how can we support? How can we rally around our schools? You heard it today, the reality. How can we rally around to support them in their work? What resources as a collaborative are you aware of that our schools can take advantage of? What partnerships and community supports can be cultivated to support our students and their families and their needs? You heard many of the needs today. I am centering myself because when I heard that the greatest need seemed to be with our little ones, when I think about our K-1, our preschoolers, this is some of the things. So what are some of the supports? So I need you to jot down these things because I want you to bring them into the space. How can we provide the support? Okay, so I will put the questions back in a moment, but I want you to start thinking about it so we can open them for conversation. So how can we support? Okay, Greg, we can put the questions down right now. We will bring them back. Thank you. Faye?
Thanks so much, Ingrid. Good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, let me apologize for being gone for a little while earlier. My computer crashed while you, Sir Kevin, were talking. I just got my computer went still and it just crashed. So I had to start from scratch and got back in. So I apologize for missing your responses to some of the first questions. But as I listened to the others, I sat here and boy, I know my blood pressure was kind of getting really high, not because of anything negative that anybody has said, but because I'm hearing the same stories that are really being experienced in schools across the country. And the thing that comes, it's not so much a question that I have, but more of a comment and perhaps a question at the end, is that COVID-19 has really been destructive in so many ways to our educators, to our kids, to our parents. It has sucked the life out of teachers. And maybe teachers feel overall that they don't right now have a lot to give because they need support for themselves, especially around the area of self-care. But there is one thing that occurs for me consistently. Every time my colleagues and I have collected data over the years about elements that are impacting students in school, the number one thing that jumps out, and some of you have heard me say this, some of you on the collaborative, you have heard me say this before. The number one thing, the number one ingredient is the relationship between the teacher and the student. It's the primary thing that impacts students. And so when students, for the most part, feel that they have a great relationship with the teachers, it literally impacts their mental health. Not just their cognitive achievement, but their mental health and their behavioral health. And Sir Kevin, you were talking about suspension and absenteeism, particularly around Black boys. And that is something that came out in data that we have collected, that the group that had the lowest scores when it came to their perceptions about positive things in schools regarding teachers, it was our Black boys. And so when we actually collected data from them, we realized that they had the lowest perceptions of positive relationships. And so the question for me is really to ask you guys, is it possible for us, even right now in the middle of COVID, to do a restart in some of our schools and our classrooms, where we literally encourage teachers to assess the relationships that they have with every student in their classroom? It is possible to be done. It needs to be done, because sometimes teachers might think that they have a good relationship with students, but if they were to ask some students, they might find out that the students do not perceive those relationships as positive, and they could be getting in the way of their learning, and particularly getting in the way of their attendance in schools. And so actually posing that to teachers sometimes is a starting point. And I just wonder if that is something that we might have to do with some of our teachers. Do a restart, a reset in our classrooms where we really concentrate on making those connections and building those relationships.
Thank you so much for that. And I know that is such a heavy loaded question for members. And I'm going to actually see it as a way of resource and support, saying, because what I heard you say, someone's calling out not only to our principals and administrators today, but all for the whole school system. So I'm asking our colleagues at the department to take note of the point that you have made as well, of how do we support, and that could be a way of support. How do we can support our school districts and able to begin to think about how do we re-engage in those relationships? Thank you so much, Faye, for that perspective. Thank you. Catherine?
Where am I? Oh, hi. Hello.
Yes.
Thank you again to the folks who spoke, again, I think candidly today, about bits and pieces we've all heard about or experienced with our clients, the kids we work with, our own families. going back to that focus on our youngest learners, and I think Amy and probably Kevin spoke the most about this. A couple of us are, as John said, are some frequent flyers on these same little meetings with boxes of the screen these days. And we've been talking a lot about little kids acclimating to school, getting some of those basic social skills and getting that structure down pat. What do you need to help them acclimate the most? Do you need more time in the schedule to build the relationships that what Faye was talking about? Do you need more physical space to be able to separate and kind of structure classrooms physically? Do you need more staff? That seems like a resounding yes. Are you able to get that staff even if you had the money? That might be a no. Do you need more community resource push-in, people who have maybe more clinical level of skill set? And the last thing is the Connecticut Voices report that I linked to talks about the need, or gives more specific research as to the benefit of having a spectrum of in-district special education environments that can serve the needs of littlest kids, and maybe not even labeled special education, but having that as another tool for kids who are most in need of a different kind of environment. Does anybody have that? Does that work, or how can we help you get that available? That was just a whole host of things. Maybe someone can chip away at it though.
Thank you so much, Catherine. I heard from you that she's posing the question to our guests. What do you need from the things that you mentioned? So if you just take an opportunity now to share, what do you need?
Sorry, the lights in my office go off if I sit too still for too long. I think that's a wonderful question. I think it's multi-pronged, and it starts from birth. I make this very cheeky joke that after somebody has a baby, nobody checks on you after you leave the hospital. And I said that after my first was born. I went home and I'm like, oh my God, is anybody going to check on me? And are we going to be okay? Are we going to make it? But truly, after you leave the hospital and you have your baby, nobody really touches point with you again, other than your family or friends, until you decide maybe you put your child into daycare or into preschool. I think as much as I would love to have more personnel in my school district at the pre-K level, if I could open my own community center for, birth to 3 services, I would love to do that. But I think even the years before they get to formal schooling, it's an opportunity for not just educators, but for mental health providers, for parent educators, for family support services, to set up shop in communities and to go out there and provide everything and anything from silly things like prenatal classes on how to take care of your child, or how to parent when your 2-year-old is in their terrible twos, how to do early literacy and singing songs and basic things of that stuff right there when they're very, very little, because I think it sets them up for success by the time they get to formal school age time. That's a huge ask, though, that is beyond school districts. And I think it goes to the level of work that you're doing, Commissioner. So, but it would certainly help, and that would definitely work. I also think space is huge too, and scheduling is part of it as well. Oftentimes very important things like developmental play and literacy type learning take time and take space, and happens in small groups, and sometimes we're overcrowded, and so we can look to expand those types of experiences and programs. But again, the more there is before they even walk through the door just makes it even better and more robust once they get here.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you so much. Catherine, thank you so much for that question. And if any of the members from the panel would like to also share with you what they need.
So I will just add one. Let me just thank Allison for starting off in the way that she did. We had similar conversations here in Danbury. We're really concerned about our pre-K and pre-K kids coming into the system. Accelerate has, quite frankly, been a bad word around here, but there is one thing we do want to accelerate in our community, and that is the idea of this collective impact. And so we've been working hard as a community, trying to find ways to leverage the many resources in this community to address things like prenatal care, to address things like how we can help, get our kids school ready well before pre-K. And like the bleeding needs to stop now. And that's why we've focused so much on our K-1-2 grade levels, because those are the things that are within our control. But we've been racing. We're looking to try to secure funding from donors in the community so we can get a collective impact going, to get our nonprofits at the table. And that reach that Allison's talking about, where our resources are certainly limited. But our goal is to bring the nonprofits to the table and focus on areas like school readiness, focus on and encourage families to get their kids in pre-K programs across the community, and do whatever we can to educate our community to make sure that kids are school ready by the time they reach us. So those are some things we've been really working hard on this year, and try to make sure we have some campaigning ready and available for the school community. But this collective impact idea, we're working really hard behind the scenes, trying to secure funding behind the scenes to see if we can have a facilitator, have someone own this from the district, independent from the district, but obviously working with the district to focus and leverage the resources in the community. So just thought I'd share that as well. So in terms of a need, I don't know if I'm answering Catherine's question directly, but we do certainly see that as a need here in the district, beside our own issues, K-12.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kevin, for that. And Catherine, thank you so much for the question. I am going to.
Can I add one?
Go ahead. Please,
may I add one thing? So just looking at the other end of the spectrum with our high school students, we're finding that there just isn't enough community resources for them. So there's only so much we can do here during our 6.5 hours with them and our limited staff in terms of counseling and meeting their social, emotional, mental health needs. Families who are really trying to get that support for their children are getting, the providers not taking new patients or new clients, constant turnover with the counseling services that are provided in the community. So, my magic wand ask would be more community resources to assist and partner with us in school.
Thank you so much, Stacy. Thank you for that. I'm being very conscious of the time. We have about 6 minutes left to be together, and I have Michelle has her hand up. Michelle, can I ask you to bring your perspective into the space, please?
Thank you, Ingrid. And I apologize. For some reason, my camera is not working right now, so I'm not hiding from you all. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a school attorney. And I just wanted to mention a few quick things. Yesterday, I was speaking with one of our client school district representatives, and she was reporting to me, this is a large district with, I would say, about a 50-50 white to students of color ratio amongst the student body. And she was reporting that they have had 38 arrests as of November 1st, and all but one of those arrests are students of color, which was a pretty sobering data point. And while I have sort of a group of school administrators in front of me, I just wanted to mention that I am still finding, despite the fact that we have a state law that requires an MOU between the school district and the police department about what the role of school resource officers is going to be in a district, that many, many districts do not have those MOUs in place, or that they have not been reviewed in a long time. And there is a new piece of legislation that can be an entry point for those discussions around requiring that school resource officers be part of your training in the area of social emotional learning and restorative practices. So To the extent that we need to take another look at those MOUs and maybe put them in place for the first time, I would love to see people starting to have that conversation in their district. So that's one thing. And the second piece is that, believe it or not, I'm still finding that school administrators are not aware of the prohibition on out-of-school suspensions for the K to second grade group. So I would put in a plug for take another look at that and make sure that people are actually aware that they're not supposed to be suspending those little kiddos out of school. The third thing that I think I haven't really heard a lot about today is the inability to hire paraprofessional staff, and just again, reports that I'm hearing from clients that they're actually hiring paraprofessional staff, and then the staff within a week or two are quitting and going back on unemployment compensation. Seems to me there's, maybe some room for state policy to look at what's happening there, because that does seem to be interfering with our ability to keep and retain and train staff who can be helpful in school districts. And then one final piece, just from my perspective, in terms of resources that have been used successfully. And we did this with a number of cases early on in the school year, where we had little ones who were severely dysregulated and coping with the return to school problems. We did bring to bear our board certified behavior analysts to come into classrooms and kind of assess what was happening there. We've done a pretty good job of bringing in BCBAs to work with our kiddos with special needs. And so they are there, and we have used them to good effect in analyzing what's happening in classrooms and helping teachers with strategies for classroom management and also individualized behavior supports when necessary. So question to the group is really more, I guess, along the lines of, do you see that? Do you have anything to add? Do you disagree? Anything that you'd like to make the group aware of with respect to any of those pieces?
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you.
If I could respond to just the paraprofessional phenomenon, we are certainly experiencing that, but I do think it's a little bit of just the taxing work of what comes along with it, but it also has to do with budget and finance as well. And just for me to say it bluntly and candidly, I think if there were more 100% funded type mandates that we have, then I think it could also help alleviate some of our kind of crunches here and there with budget, so that we can appropriately compensate people who are highly qualified and retain them. It's hard sometimes when we're a smaller district, so we don't have the largest budget. When we go to compare somebody who we have in district who's here as a paraprofessional or as an RBT or a BCBA, but then an outside provider is willing to pay them much more to then use them as consultant and put them in to other school districts, they leave our district and go to those outside providers because they're obviously going to be compensated more. I understand it. They have a family, they have a life that they need to live. But there is a crunch on us when, although it's a municipality that passes a budget, when there are other things like rising special education costs or just rising inflation in general, and there isn't necessarily an increase in the funding that we receive, although we did receive our PESR this year, which was very, very helpful, just sustained over time. I think some of those funded mandates that are only partially funded, if they could be 100% funded, wouldn't that be a wonderful thing?
Thank you so much, Allison. I'm looking at the time, and you know how I am as a facilitator with the time. So I'm going to do one thing. Thank you for those of you who are still on the call. Thank you so much for staying for another extra minute. One of the things that I'm going to ask the panelists, it was a question that it was put before, and you don't have to answer, it's a homework assignment. So the question was, if you could name one thing that the legislator could do in the comment section to support you in the issues that you have addressed, you have put forward regarding behavioral mental health crisis in schools, what will that be? I'm going to leave you that as a homework, because this is the aspect about supports and how can we come together in being able to support you. If there was one thing that the legislative session can do for you as it relates to the mental health crisis that we have discussed, what will that be? And I will ask if you could just please send that wish directly to our colleague Kim Traverso, so that we can actually, as a collaborative, begin to explore what you have put forward, please, because that's the effort of the collaborative. To my members of the collaborative, you also have homework. The aspect of what supports can we provide our school districts. I need you to please send that list, send those notes to our colleague, Kim Traverso, so that we can, next time we come together, we begin to address those levels of support and those items that you have put forward. With that said, I'm going to ask you to please, through your reactions, open your microphone so that we can thank our guest speakers today for their time and their candid, very real perspectives they have placed today for us. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to our administrators. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
And before you jump off,
Yes.
I just really, I took so many notes and there were so many things I could say. The one thing I would say, usually when you get connected to us like this, you stay connected. So I'm asking our administrators, I mean, we would like to be able to come back to you. This was so rich conversation. We will not do the best job we can in what the solutions are unless we know what the issues are on the ground. We don't want to have solutions in search of a problem. And so it's so important for us to be listening to you, to hear what those are as we're supporting our districts, supporting our students, supporting our families. It's so critical to know where you are and to hear directly from you. So we will continue to reach out. I know this team will, as we continue to coin, as you know, we're working on this, and I have the ability to work with our colleagues in different state agencies as well to answer the questions that you're asking, the support you're asking for. And yes, the staffing issue is front and center, as you know. Superintendents that are on here, I hope we can see you tomorrow morning, at our usual time. So just so everyone in the collaborative here know, Kim, I'm probably going to give you some work. We may need to get together a little bit more frequently, because this is conversation that we need to continue to have if we will together coin the solutions that will be sustained. We have a state board member, Erin, thank you for being here, that's here. So, listening into your conversations. Michelle, if you have specific districts that there are issues, we have staff turnover, but that may not know about that legislation, call Kim, because we can pick up the phone and make that call. I mean, that is the work we're doing together. So please don't feel as if you can't reach out and let us know where there's an issue, because we're willing to intervene as necessary on behalf of our kids. I hope you know the school family community connection is critical and strong, which is what we've heard here. Our educators are saying to us, Commissioner, how can you help relieve the pressure so we can be at our best for our students and for our families? So hearing from you constantly is really where we are. So I thank you so much for your candid, really just sharing those issues that are there. So all of us are, different spaces. Catherine, thanks for the questions you asked. Those are key questions because we need to know those answers so we can all work together to figure out what are the best solutions that we all together should be working on. So again, thank you for the extra few minutes, Ingrid. Thank you. I had to jump in just to say thanks for everything that's happening here.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. I was going to give it to you anyway. So thank you so much for jumping in. And with that said, I know John is going to close us. And from my perspective, thank you so much to all of you. As always, you're such an amazing group. And to our guests, thank you so much. And as the commission saying, we know where you are. We definitely want to come back. So thank you so much. John?
Yes, thank you, everyone. So our next meeting is March 24th, but as the commissioner says, don't be surprised if we ask you to come together before then. There's an urgency to this work. And so we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much. We'll be in touch. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.